Hey, Dress Teen Stress, I'm Hannah Ho, and welcome back to our Beyond the Brain series where we interview health professionals and experts about mental health in order to get a deeper insight of different aspects on stress and mental well being. Today, I'm here with mental health advocate Brad Gage. Brad, can you please start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. And thank you so much for having me on the show, Hannah. So I am a TV producer, a content creator, and I also am affiliated as a national ambassador for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is the largest grassroots mental illness organization in the country. And I recently was on their board of directors and just uh, uh, you know, focusing on youth mental health is mainly, my thing. Even though I'm in my 30s, I at least I bridge the gap between the older folks in the organization and the younger. And yeah, I mean, I could talk about it, I'm sure, later, but the majority of what I make for my own channels is content around modern masculinity and male psychology.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, kind of going into more about how you got to where you are today, can you share your journey becoming a mental health advocate and using platforms like comedy and media, and what inspired you to focus specifically on mental health?
Um, Great question. I was not a guy who was into therapy. I think that's an unsurprising thing. In my 20s, I didn't think I needed therapy. I didn't think I had any issues. And of course, all human beings go through bouts of depression or anxiety or more or neurodivergence or whatever. But basically in 2019, a thing happened where I discovered that a friend of mine had been abusing women in my friend community. And through that process of just figuring out what I could have maybe seen or done differently or what type of behavior I am okay with, I had stopped being his friend a few years before I really found out what the bad stuff that was happening. But um it just caused a moment of like introspection where I'm like, well, what does being a man mean? What is my role in masculinity in general? And so I started reading books and listening to podcasts, and most of it pointed to, the fact that men need a space to be vulnerable and speak about their feelings, and there's not a lot it's getting better, but there aren't a lot of spaces to do that. And so I sought to create a space for that. And then through that work, I got invited to do some on-camera hosting for National Alliance on Mental Illness. And then they just kind of pulled me into their orbit. And then I got more and more affiliated.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. So you did touch a little bit about how your focus is primarily on mental health. So I noticed that one of your big mottos is breaking away from the bro code norm. So could you tell us a little bit more about this and what you see as the biggest barrier to individuals today, especially teens and men as well, seeking help for their mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the terms that people are throwing around a lot is the loneliness epidemic right now. Um, you know, We're worried about young men. There's pipelines into kind of the I mean, whether you like it or not, there's pipelines into the alt right or also just like incel behavior, and that's not all men. And also the realization that shaming men who do go that way is not helpful either.
Right,
Breaking the bro code as a kind of motto is about the set of rules unwritten, that men just kind of are grown within and know.
right.
Guy, when you say bro code, guys kind of know what that means,
Mm.
and we self police to follow those rules. If you don't follow those rules, then you get kind of shunned from the group or thought of differently it changes your value and your dominance in your hierarchy in
Right.
your social, group.
Mhm.
And so breaking it is about, breaking away from it, inspecting it, being curious about it, understanding the pieces as you break them off, that represent kind of this conditioned behavior
Right.
that kind of men in an invisible cage that we just kind of live within,
Mm,
whether we're conscious of it or not.
right. I see. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. So, mental health is definitely a pretty big topic, encompasses several things across many different aspects. How would you explain mental health in just 3 words and why?
Uh, I should have listened to more episodes of the podcast because I wonder how other people. I listened to some of them. I don't think I got this same got to this same question with other folks, but broken down to 3 words, I think is your inner world. I
Mm,
think that's mental health. It's you have a whole thing going on inside you. There's things outside of you that affect it, but mental health is about your inner world, the invisible life, the invisible thoughts that no one else get to see. And whether you hide them or not, it's all you really have in the end. Like it controls your behavior and it informs the type of life that you have. And so shining a light on it with the help of others, hopefully a therapist or a psychiatrist, is I think just kind of the easiest way to manage the inner world.
I would agree. Thank you for sharing. I haven't heard that one before. Thank you. That was great. So kind of shifting to your own podcast, Real Feels, you're tackling the topic of self-improvement and emotional growth. So what are your primary goals for your podcast and what kind of impact do you hope it has on your listeners?
I think there's a big rude awakening happening post American election, this year, understanding that there is this very potent and popular gang of dudes who have a very firm grasp on the younger generation of straight men and of all races, really, in this country. And so my podcast is the aim to be an opposing and more welcoming, loving source of help and community
Mhm.
than folks like Andrew Tate
Oh yeah.
or even Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson, folks like that. That I understand their popularity, and I made a video, almost 20-minute video
Mhm.
about Joe Rogan, where I think I understand why he's popular, and I appreciate some of the aspects of what he does and why people are drawn to him. But on the whole, he does not use his platform in a way that I think is for the betterment of society. I think it's a very it's a there's a lot of hate, there's a lack of empathy, and there's a general underlying disdain for women that pokes out.
Mhm.
It doesn't it doesn't show itself so overtly, but it's subtle and it's consistent.
Mhm.
And I would say that's the same thing with a lot of his ilk. The big I've been calling him recently the big brains of the online manosphere.
Mhm. It's definitely, I've listened to a couple episodes of your own podcast, and I can definitely say it's really refreshing to hear something new and something really that takes away from what the kind of the norm that we have going on. So, kind of going back to your work, is your experience from anytime you've worked in the mental health field and department that was especially meaningful to you?
Very meaningful. It just happened this past year. Being on the board of directors for NAMI New York State, I was in charge of the Youth Advisory Council, and then we had a group of 10, 18 to 25-year-olds who for a year they did advocacy on Capitol Hill in Albany. They talked with senators about different mental health bills that they wanted to get passed and had direct conversations. They did a podcast called Youth Voices in Mental Health that I produced and edited with them, and then it just all culminated in this conference that we had a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that's
That was beautiful because they got to all get together in person for the first time in a year, and a lot of them have various mental health diagnoses that they've been dealing with. Some of them are currently in treatment for some of them. It's a wide range of stuff, and they all, I could see them, step into their power and speak about it. And there was a live audience that they're talking. It was really a proud moment to facilitate that experience for them.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. So, kind of going deeper into your experience with NAMI, what does your role look like, and how do you see it contributing to the broader conversation on mental health?
So I'm no longer on the board. I did step down so that I could focus more on kind of the real feels breaking the bro code work. But I am still a NAMI ambassador, and that work looks like promoting things that NAMI wants promoted, and sometimes it's trying to get a law passed. Sometimes it's 988, the crisis line that they were so instrumental in getting put into the national spotlight. I was a part of their book, You Are Not Alone, speaking about, men and therapy and masculinity. I think the main quote that I would pull from the book of mine was like, even Dwayne the Rock Johnson goes to therapy. Like, who's more masculine than that?
Mhm.
This is what is happening and moving forward. This is what the future holds. The
Mhm.
stigma, breaking the stigma, really. So,
Right, sure.
making videos, doing posts, doing podcasts. Being somebody they can go to
Right.
for a radio interview or something like that, which I've done before. That's the work moving forward with NAMI.
That's great. That's lovely to hear. So, what does being a mental health advocate mean to you personally in all your roles, in all the work you've done, and how do you define your role in that specific capacity?
Um, I mean, being an advocate, right? Like, people talk about advocacy all the time. I think being an advocate for anything means sharing your story openly and vulnerably, and asking other folks about their journey and about their status and checking in and just being curious and being a safe place and safe person to share and commune with. Really, that's what being an advocate's about. There's elements of leadership there, but
Mhm.
it's standing on a soapbox sometimes, banging a drum. It's getting attention, saying,
Mhm.
"Hey, look at this, and here's why you should look at this, and this is why you should care."
Right. I see. I see. So, with your experience, can you share a little bit of your perspective on what you think today's current state of teen mental health is and stress and how it compares to when you were a teenager?
Each generation thinks that the way they were brought up. Hopefully they're going to think like, oh, it was. I'm so happy for me as a millennial, like I grew up, I didn't have a computer in my house until I was like, 12 or something. I didn't have a smartphone until I was, um, geez, out of college. I waited.
Mhm.
That's fine. I think I have a different experience, but it's not, I don't think it's better or worse.
Right.
There's always going to be negative aspects. I think that Gen Z and Alpha are aware
Mhm.
of are both. Two things are true. Gen X and Gen Z and Alpha are both aware that there is media that is influencing almost everything they're
Yeah,
doing,
for sure.
and that there's an addiction to it. There really is. I know there's. I think there is an addiction to it because
I agree. I agree.
people there are studies that say no, it's not real. Like it goes, it's the same thing if eggs are good for you or not. But um, it's one of those things where it affects all of our lives negatively in
Right.
many ways. But at the same time, it is an outlet and a source of community and a place to stay in touch with people. And it is a town square of sorts, though Twitter is becoming less and less like that.
Mhm.
And so, what does it compare? I just think it's a different set of problems. And at the same time, there's so much more awareness of what is going on. There's so much more information, and whether or not our brains are supposed to process that amount of information, we're going to find that out. But at the same time, it is empowering to know as much as I know because of TikTok. I love cooking now,
Oh,
because of
really? Oh,
TikTok.
that's great.
So it, they're different, but they're the same, I think, generationally.
Mhm. And I guess with all the new and rapid advancements that we have in technology, there's always a good and a bad side to everything. So that's great to hear. So why do you think it is important to be educated on the topic of general mental health and kind of maintaining and taking care of your own stress?
Well, if you don't figure out a way to take care of your own stress, you you live in hell, basically, and no one wants that. And if you don't accept that help is needed, and you don't understand what resources are available, then you're stuck there. Um, and if you block yourself from the idea, and you allow stigma to rule,
Mhm.
um, then you're just, yeah, you're this is I mean, suicide numbers are getting up there. I think especially for men, suicide numbers are creeping up consistently, and it's, it's important because we are a communal animal. And when we lose that community, when we lose the kind of love and affection that can just come from the people around you, um, then if you don't get any help from a mental health professional, uh, it's a tough life. And nobody wants a tough life. Nobody's asking for a tough life. And so that's why being educated around mental health is important. And that's why I'm glad it's become so cool, really. That's how things, I think, really changes when an idea becomes cool.
Yeah,
It is nice. It's not, I think it became very uncool to be racist. And so there was finally in the 60s some legislation that happened. Same with gay marriage. And even though sometimes it feels like we're, pulling back a little bit on some of those politically, it's still not cool.
it's great to hear though. So, kind of just out of my own curiosity, as a mental health advocate myself, I've learned that it's important to not only address the stress in my community, but also address my own stress. So, what are three ways that you prioritize your mental health and how you maintain and take care of your stress?
Prioritizing mental health. I talk to my therapist
Oh, really?
every week.
Oh, that's
Even
great.
if I don't think I have anything, there's always something. I mean, you start off a session, you go, I don't really have anything to talk about. There's always something to talk about. It's not about finding or seeking problems. It's not always problems. It's just investigating your inner world. There's so much in there.
Right.
Um,
Finding yourself.
uh, yes. And so I think that's one way. I meditate as often as I can, which is not as much as I should. I think anybody who meditates would say the same thing. And then I think, I mean, because of a lot of things, but also like there's a push. Just some people I follow on TikTok. It's like they promote walking.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of health dudes that I look up to who talk about diet, and they just push going outside and going for a walk.
Oh, yeah,
And
for sure.
so it's the best. And
It is.
not being on your phone during it, just like walking.
Oh, yeah, definitely, for sure. So, kind of to finish off, lastly, what advice would you give to someone that's struggling with their mental health, or kind of like a last message you would give to our Dress Teen Stress audience?
Um, the biggest thing is it's okay. Well, we say this all the time in NAMI. It's okay to not be okay.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There's nothing wrong with you. Everyone has issues that they're dealing with, and that doesn't make you bad or wrong or anything. It's just part of being alive. And so, if there is something that's bugging you, you're ruminating about it. Ask someone you trust if they can help, and if they can't, then I think there's resources like the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or just going on Google or Yelp and finding a therapist nearby. Um, what's that, darling? or going on Psychology Today. My fiance is a therapist,
Oh,
a
really?
psychotherapist,
That's great.
and she knows a lot more about this than I do, and I'm so grateful for her. And I'm not
Oh,
just
that's
saying it because she can hear
wonderful.
me. Um, and Psychology Today, yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to pull out of my head because that's where you can find an actual like certified therapist near
Is
you.
Psychology Today kind of like a website or?
Yes, it's a website.
Oh, okay, great. Oh, that's funny. That's fun. I'll have to look into that for sure. So that's all for I have for you today. Do you have anything for me? Anything you want to kind
I want to shout out Gabrielle Fassman, my fiance,
of Of course.
because she has educated me quite a bit. And yeah, check out Real Feels, the YouTube channel and the podcast, and my Instagram is Beau Radley Radley.
Perfect. Sounds great. Thank you so much for talking with us today, Brad, about mental health and your experience with it throughout your career and helping us address teen stress.